go live. There we go. It's Wednesday, March 27th, 2024. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we are reviewing the anime Daanjin Meshi, Delicious in Dungeon. So, another unplanned hiatus and an odd occurrence. I think there have been way more.
It's not that odd. You get ill much more frequently than I do.
It's funny though, because you always say you never get ill, but then when you are ill, you'll forget that you were ill.
I don't never get ill. I just get ill much more rarely.
But I point out,
people around me.
Since the year 2008, I have never gotten ill before a PAX and thus had to miss a PAX until now. In all these years.
That's obviously true, yes. That hasn't happened. We've gotten ill at a PAX,
Yep.
We've gotten ill after a PAX, but never before a PAX, preventing going in the first place.
But I also think it was an interesting opportunity because for various reasons, partly because I like to talk a lot and I talk loud, so at a lot of conventions, especially like MagFests or older PAXs, there'd be more panels than just the Rim and Scott panels where I would just do like extra panels by myself. Scott rarely will do more panels than the small number necessary to get that free badge. But this time, we had to engage
I got 2 free badges this time. I could have done less.
But this time, we had to engage in, not only did we have 2 brand new panels, one of which was actually a brand new, like, really good panel, but we hadn't really done a practice round of it. And for those of you who are at PAX, you got to see the rare occurrence of a Scott solo panel. So how'd that go? Because when I have to do those, it is more than twice as tiring as doing a panel with you to do a panel by myself. I would say it is 210% more exhausting to be on stage for an hour with nobody to bounce off of, no one to like talk while you take a break and collect your thoughts. Like you just got to steamroll through for an hour.
Well, part of it, I prepared as much as I could.
Yeah.
And for the preparation definitely helped, but there was still parts that were weak, because it wasn't perfect. But it was, I'd say 80%, and then I was simultaneously worried. I even just told the audience because that's how I do. I'm like, look, either I'm going to go way short and I'm going to have to pull out my rules of question asking, or B, I'm going to overcompensate out of fear of going short and I'm going to go long, in which case, no question asking. Either way, if you try to say anything while I'm giving the panel, I will ignore your existence. Don't even try it. But yeah, and the first panel, which was the completely new one, went short. Had to resort to rules of question asking, which people 90% obeyed.
I think part of what happened there is I've noticed, because I was going to mention this, when I do panels by myself, I also have trouble regulating. There's something about when we're both on stage together where we like, whoever's not talking seems to just be keeping track of time and kind of hurries the other one along or like slows down.
So in the second panel, which was just 39 games, right? A panel which was purely clickbait and had no purpose and was literally end of the con. They started tearing down the room as soon as I finished. I basically told the audience, look, I'm just doing this because it's obviously clickbait. You don't have to be here, etc. Usual. But I was like, look, what I'm doing up here is basically nothing. I gave the panel a point, which was you should do a panel instead of me. Why am I doing this? You should do a panel, right? We have something meaningful to say. But in that panel, went long because out of fear, like, the ladder happened, right? I was like, well, I went short the last time and I further overcompensated. And I was looking at the timer. I had like several timers. There's the timer from the PAX people, the timer in my Keynote app, all kinds of timers. And I looked at the timers. I saw how many slides were left. And I knew that every single slide was a game to talk about. And I saw how much time was left. And I was like, I'm not going to finish all these. Like halfway through, I knew I wasn't going to finish all those. But I was too busy talking about all these games without stopping. that I didn't plan for that, and I just got to the end, and I'm like, well, that's the end.
Well, one thing to the credit of
what
that
I should
panel,
have done,
the list of games was pretty good.
Yeah. What I should have done is, as soon as they held up the 5-minute sign, I should have been like, well, I got 5 minutes left, and there's like 10 games left. So instead of going over them, here are my end of panel sayings, right? Rather than rushing through them and forgetting them and such. That's what but a lesson has been learned. And such. So
I think the problem was I looked at when the first time we did a panel like that, and we definitely front loaded the games that we had like a lot to say, like we'd have to hold back. And then toward the end, the games did like only need a sentence explanation. But in this panel, like it ends on fast food franchise, a game that requires like a little
Didn't even get there.
Yeah.
But I did an enforcer that I was working with. I was just chatting with, and he was like, this person's father was like a big time tabletop person, the kind that doesn't go to PAX and goes to Gathering of Friends, which is, like the week-long deal, right, for the old grognard types.
Yeah.
And this person, the son of the legendary old grognard, right, was like, yeah, my favorite game is actually this Monopoly type game. And I'm like, fast food franchise? And they're like, yes. Yes, indeed. And I was like, chicken surprise. Ice cream scream. Let's go.
I still want to make the chicken surprise shirt, even if it's just so I can wear it with no context.
I know, right? Yeah, many things happened at PAX, but now is not the time to discuss the rest of those.
Yeah, it was.
I've actually got, many things to discuss on Geek Nights right now. But we got to save them up. We can't be squirting them out in one episode.
Yeah, I've not doing Geek Nights for being sick and also missing a PAX. Like I have queued up just things that I got to get out or things I've encountered.
It'll get us through a couple weeks at least.
Oh, easily. We got
about 2 weeks.
We got a hopper, and we've demonstrated in the last couple of years we're capable of holding on to things in the hopper for about a week or two, as opposed to the old hopper that lasted exactly 24 hours.
Yeah. Well.
So, and otherwise, of course, I'm basically back at full health. I stayed home from work a couple more days and worked from home just because I could.
Your vision is not permanently damaged?
Nope, the vision is not permanently damaged. But if you didn't know, if you get an enterovirus, which is one of the two main types of viruses that can cause what humans like to just call a cold, which is just code for we don't fucking know, and nobody invested in making a good test for this, so good luck, have fun. So colds can be a lot of different things, but this particular kind of cold can basically infect like every different part of your body, sometimes simultaneously with different symptoms, and they can take between 1 and like 5 weeks to go away, and they can also go away. You can be completely symptom-free, and then, like, a day later, it comes back full on, and apparently that's just a thing. Like, that's common enough to where there's words for it, and I read papers about it. But that sucks, and I do not want to bring the evil eye upon myself, but I will say that the cold I had for the last 3-ish weeks was objectively, for me, way worse than either COVID I had in terms of symptoms. Like, this just fucking sucked.
Okay.
But I'm back. Geek Nights is back. We're ready to rock. There's so much news that there's almost no way we could even like catch up. So I just want to direct your attention to something that appeared on YouTube 8 hours ago. The Spider Within is a Spider-Verse story that's just straight up from Sony. Like, this is legit. It's on Sony Pictures Animation. It's like a side story about Miles Morales in the Spider-Verse. It's 7 minutes long. It just dropped. Like, I don't think anyone knew this was coming.
Well, at the end of the second movie in the theaters, it said Spider-Verse 3, whatever. I forget the name of it is. Through the Spider-Verse, across, beyond.
Well, I mean, if Spider-Verse 2 was what it was, I feel like Spider-Verse 3 is the best movie you've ever seen.
I forget what the title of the third one is.
The Return of the King.
Yeah. That third movie, they said right on screen, it said the third movie coming March 29th, 2024. That is 2 days from now. And that is obviously not going to happen because the Pandiddly delayed them, and also the overworking delayed them. So that movie is going to come, quote, when it's ready, probably next year.
Yeah.
So I wonder the timing of this short being released, right? Is it A, was always going to be released as promotion for the movie that should have been out this Friday? Or B, sort of a replacement to make you not forget about the movie that would have released this Friday, but instead will be released next year, or perhaps who knows when.
So I want to point out, because this just dropped on YouTube, and the top comment on the YouTube video is, and I'm quoting, "Man, it's crazy to think that Beyond the Spider-Verse was supposed to come out this week."
That's correct.
But there's something else going on about this.
Oh,
that's
Beyond.
pretty cool.
Yes, I was correct. Beyond is the right one. At least if they're correct.
I feel like
could be wrong.
I have a prediction that Beyond the Spider-Verse will be leaving the canons of Spider-Man and the canon of the Spider-Verse, very similarly to how the new Evangelion movies were the end of not just Evangelion, but all Evangelions. I feel like there is going to be a very similar allegory happening.
Maybe.
But also, this short is actually being released as part of a charity drive in collaboration with the Kevin Love Fund, which I was not familiar with. And the Kevin Love Fund it looks like it's a fund specifically about mental health. I haven't dug into all the details yet. Like, I literally just learned about it because of this video, but it seems pretty legit, and they appear to be gathering donations from this video, and they're using this video to promote the Kevin Love Fund.
Okay.
So good stuff all around. In some other news, you got this Astro Boy thing right here.
Yeah, so the original Astro Boy TV show, the black and white one from the 60s, has had a few episodes that are sort of lost episodes, right? Where the film was, messed up and whatever. And one of those episodes is still lost as far as I know. But two of the episodes, basically what they did on like the DVDs or whatever, is they sort of had audio from them still, and they pieced together based on the manga, because they still had the manga it was based on, and clips from other episodes. They sort of pieced them what they could together to make, because it's not like it's hard to piece together an Astro Boy episode.
Yeah.
There's not much to them.
Especially old Astro Boy. Like, it's just following the manga as far as I could tell.
Yeah, so, but apparently, two of the episodes have been restored, recovered, and they aired on some service in Japan. How about that? So that's pretty awesome. I don't know what the prospects are for the third episode. I'm guessing not good if they didn't bring that one back also, right? You got to imagine if they brought back 2 out of 3, something prevented them from doing the 3. Right? But that's still pretty awesome. I love to see things recovered that were once thought to be gone.
Yep, it's also been Astro Boy season for me, because Emily and I finally just watched the Pluto anime, which just fantastic. But of course it was, because the manga was also fantastic, and
it is the manga basically.
Yep,
there's not much difference at all.
Which
I do think, though,
I just
what I
remember
would
way
like to
back,
see,
because you read the manga faster than I did, and we talked about it on Geek Nights. If I remember, we sat down one night to record Geek Nights, and I mentioned like, oh yeah, Pluto's pretty good so far, and you said, wait till you get to Saddam Hussein, and I said, ha, what? And then you didn't say anything else, and then I was reminded of that moment when we were watching the manga, or watching the anime, because we're watching it, and I'm just like, so when's Saddam gonna come? And then Saddam's there. It just follows the manga, like, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also, in the last episode of Geek Nights, Between Our Sickness, I just want to point out again, don't watch Pluto all the way through and then immediately watch Robot Dreams, because it's going to really, really color your perception of Robot Dreams, and you're going to have to work hard to separate the things that Pluto was saying from the very different set of allegories that Robot Dreams was going after.
I didn't really make too many connections, but I mean, it's easy to, because they're about robots and humanity, but I've seen or read so many sci-fi stories that are about like, are robots people? Do we treat the robots like people? I don't know. Right? And what is humanity? Can a robot be?
Oh no,
I've seen 10,000 of those, so I don't like, direct. All of them are obviously coming from the same root of, Metropolis, or who knows even further back than that. So, directly saying like one and the other is kind of, silly.
Yeah, it was partly just that they were juxtaposed temporally in my brain, so I had to like step back from thinking about Pluto, because I was still thinking about Pluto again. But But yeah, that's part of why we did the Murderbot books as the book club. But that was one of the things
That's
I
another
liked.
one.
That's what I like the most about the Murderbot books is they just skip the entire is it people and get straight into what do we do with the fact that they're obviously people. We don't need to have that sci-fi conversation.
Well, Murderbot books did also have the ones that were just bots.
It did.
And were questionably people.
Yeah, but
not the ones that are obviously the Murderbot is obviously.
But at no point does anyone question that the thing at the level of Murderbot is people. Like book 1, like chapter 1.
But also, while there are bots that like pilots that are just flying ships that don't seem like they're quite at the people level.
Yep.
Then they throw in Art, who has no biological components we know of, that is clearly people.
But it's even more people than Murderbot in some ways. But like
more people than people.
Like one of the first scenes in Murderbot is all the people seeing the Murderbot and be like, "Oh shit, it's people! Obviously, it's people." Like they just skip right past that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, things of the day. Another new thing, this dropped like 12 days ago. It's already got almost 2 million views. It's just a really cute, short, animated music video to a really cute short song about a girl in her first 2 days in college. And it's really poignant, really cute, really short. I love everything about this, and I think everyone should watch it.
So one thing I've been doing some thinking about lately are, skills, people who have specialized skills, and how there are certain skills that we need, and we don't have it when we need more people with those skills because the thing that they do, we need more of it done, and there aren't enough people who have learned that thing or are good enough at it to where we can trust them to do it.
Like that special thing about heart attacks.
usually medical things is a big one.
Yep.
Right, where it's like, yes, it's like even if we manufactured a shit ton of MRI machines and that way no one had to wait for an MRI, we could just scan everyone in the whole world. You need enough radiologists to do that. How many people can a radiologist scan in a day? How many people are on Earth, etc. Right? Those sorts of questions. But if you're thinking about less serious skills, artistic skills, you've got things going on. I keep seeing stories about how in Japan, all these great old artisans who people are making YouTube videos of to show off how amazing they are. They got like no apprentices and they can't even sell their business. They can't even give it away.
Nobody's got any money and there's no more slack in society.
Right. It's like, and no one wants to learn some, this ancient skill and become the master of whatever it is.
I would argue there are probably tons of people who would want to learn almost any one of these skills, including the one that's your thing of the day. I just think society, capitalism, etc., people who are even a little canny look at that and realize I could become the master, but I would also die in the gutter.
Yeah. So this person, Joby Carter, they are one of the few people who remains that I'm aware of. There's not many who are basically masters of the art of sign writing. So nowadays, when you want to make signs, like you can go to a sign making shop in most, medium to large places on cities and towns and get a sign for your business. Usually those light up ones, right? LEDs or whatever. They come in all, you can get tons of customization. But way back in the day, say typically at like a circus, right? There's that particular font that is like, you get to see the font, and even if the words on the font said like "not a circus," no circus is here, you'd be like, that font means elephant peanuts. Let's go. There's clearly a clown behind that gate. You could just write. It could just write "go away," no admittance, and there's a clown because of the font, right? But back in the day, that font wasn't made with a computer. That font wasn't made by any sort of Photoshops. Right? That font wasn't made by a robot with a paintbrush. It was painted on a wooden sign with paint by a human who was very skilled, and probably did not get enough appreciation for those skills. And Joby Carter is a person in the year 2024 who has those skills and will show off those skills, will use those skills to make you a sign in exchange for money, and more importantly, will teach you those skills in exchange for money. And perhaps even partially for not money. And I wonder though, if you learn the skills from Joby Carter and master the art of sign writing as well as they have, could you make money doing it? Because there's sort of the market's kind of small and it seems like he's cornered it.
Yeah.
But I am glad that the art will not fade and that Joby Carter is passing it on to some people's.
Well, it's great. He's got a
it
quote.
is an art I greatly appreciate because boy, do I love those signs.
If you scroll down even a little bit on his page, he's got a quote. When you know how to truly see lettering, you'll never look at the world the same way again. And as someone who gets mad about kerning, even though I am not a kerning expert, like I couldn't make it good, but I can tell you when it's bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In the meta moment, the Geek Nights Book Club book is Walk On Girl. The night is short. We'll probably finish it pretty soon.
On the train to PAX, I read part 2.
Ooh, all right.
Which was the book fair part.
I'm going to move into the next part then this weekend.
We'll go to the third part is I will read next.
Yeah, I'm liking it. It partly though, it's reminding me about everything I liked about the movie, but also it's really well written. Like I'm enjoying it. It moves pretty quick. Scott was just at PAX East. I think our next convention is going to be PAX West, followed by PAX Unplugged, and then PAX East again, which, that's how our schedule is going to be at this point. MagFest in between those two probably, and otherwise, I don't know what we're going to be up to. Probably doing a lot of biking and stuff.
It is the summertime for the beacon and the bichin'. The beacon and the bichin'. The biking and the beacon.
I went out and I bought new skis because the pro move with most things is to buy them just as the season is ending. Like, you're going to buy a new bike, buy last year's model.
Well, yes and no, right? There's two strategies, right? Well, there's a few different strategies, right? A, buy the brand new thing as soon as it comes out because even though you'll pay a lot, you get more value because you've had more time with it, right?
Yep. I think that applies mostly to when there's a significant advancement in the field. So, for example, if you buy a 4080 the day it comes out as a video card, that is absolutely worth it if you're going to use that power.
It'll cost you the same amount of money 2 months from now, and you'll get 2 months less usage out of it.
Yep.
Right? Because you're going to die presumably on the same day in the future.
But for an average car, like, is the 2025 version of a specific car materially different from the 2024 version? In most cases, no.
Yep. Anyway, we've done shows about buying things. Let's move on.
So let me put a little marker here for the main bit. All right. So, some time ago, this manga came out starting in 2014, and I think I read a little bit of it. Like when it came out in English, I read like one volume.
We have most of the volumes on the shelf. I did read at least one of them, perhaps two, but I forgot the details. I
didn't even read deep enough to get to the dragon, so
I remember the dragon's literally the first page.
No, beating the dragon.
Oh, yeah, I didn't get to that, no. Yeah. Not even close. Yeah.
But what I remember is I read, like, the first volume, and it was super cute, and I really liked the art, and I very specifically really liked the faces the characters make. Like, that sold me on this manga.
There's a lot of mangas that do that, but this is one of them.
Yeah. And then and it had a pretty good premise, but I don't think we ever read it on Geek Nights. Like, it was cute, it was light, but it wasn't really a manga season, at least for me. There are apparently now 14 volumes of this manga. It's been running continuously between 2014 and it appears to have ended in September of 2023. So not that long ago.
Correct. Yep.
But more importantly, the reason we're talking about it today is that this year
it is a very popular manga.
Yeah. And I can see why. Like there's a lot of reasons why you could predict this would be a popular manga. But of course, a popular manga tends to get a popular anime, and in a confluence, Netflix licensed Dungeon Meshi. They contracted Studio Trigger to make the anime, and the anime started coming out this year, a couple months ago. There are 12 episodes. It comes out every Thursday. I'm watching it as it comes out, and that's what we're reviewing today.
Yeah, they're not doing. I think the reason it's not like a big dump, even though it's a Netflix, is because they're putting one episode out, like I think actually broadcasting on Japan and some channel. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that that's what's happening.
And you know what? I'm fine with that. I do not have time in my life to sit down and like dump watch a show, except in very limited circumstances.
You don't just because they dump to release it doesn't mean you got to dump watch it.
Yeah, but also because it's coming out slowly. One thing I've noticed. So one, my non-ultra nerdy like contacts, like people I work with. Some of my coworkers are just watching the show as it comes out because their kids are watching it, just like regular old TV. So once again, anime's mainstream, but because it's coming out week by week, like people at work, like on Fridays are like, oh, hey, did you watch the Dungeon show? How about that dragon? Because 0% of them are reading the manga. They're only watching this anime.
Yeah. So the thing with this show is you look around the mangas right now, the popular mangas and animes, and there's been for quite a few years now this trend of it's the people talk about isekai, which which is shows where you're transported into another world, right?
Yep.
Usually a video game RPG world.
Yep.
And that does account for a lot of these. But this isn't that, first of all right? This is just the world they live in. It's not a transported to
the
another
world.
The
thing is, I think a lot of those older ones, like Escaflowne, technically, like she was transported to another world, but there's like Slayers had a certain level of the Slayers universe felt very video gamey, but it wasn't the more modern trend of literally transported into a literal video game. And here
like
are
a Sword
stats.
Art Online is, right?
Yeah.
But what is happening more nowadays are these, the past several years, I say nowadays, right? For a while now, but still going strong, are these sort of scenario-based shows.
Mm-hmm.
And, you think about it, every show sort of is a, situational sitcom, scenario-based, right?
Yeah.
Even think about like Death Note is
here's the book. It's got rules. We're going to explore this scenario to its absolute extreme conclusion and then make another season with different characters for some reason.
Right. Or even like a lot of shonen shows. One Piece, you might even say it's like a scenario-based show. It's you're a pirate in a world where there's this One Piece and if you get it, you'll be the pirate king or whatever.
Yeah.
No one knows what it is. It's off in this grand line somewhere, right? It's like that's a loose, sort of overarching scenario. But what's happening is that a lot of these, they're just going all in on these weird scenarios, and they're literally naming a lot of shows the name of the scenario. Like, there's like, is it okay to date girls in a dungeon? There's what's the one? Oh, like I leveled up too long or whatever. I killed 1 million slimes and got max level. Or a lot of RPG based
They're
ones,
at the
right?
point to
or it's
where
like the weakest person from the strongest village like left and went to the tutorial village. Right?
Like if we listed 10 real ones and 5 fake ones, you wouldn't be able to tell which ones were real and which ones were fake.
And some of them, the premises at least sound fun, if trite, right? But the premise of Delicious in Dungeon is adventurers, actual adventurers, not, people from another world, right?
Yep.
Go into a dungeon, and the dungeon's real deep, and they don't want to carry food with them, and they can't afford to buy food, so they eat what's in the dungeon, and the show is about the food. And even though it's sort of one of those kind of scenarios, it actually works because, it's not just something that's I don't know what the right word for it.
Well, I guess what it is that
it's not like a fan service where it's like you sort of have this wish fulfillment of like, dating girls or being level 1,000 or something, right? It's sort of taking it on as more of a real challenge, conflict resolution, problem solving thing, and it's closer to the Dr. Stone, but less stupid.
Yep. But also, while it centers the cooking in everything that's happening, the plot is not about the cooking. Like if you separate the plot from the scenario, the plot is these are adventurers, and like irrespective of why they start and why they're poor, everybody's trying to go into this dungeon because this dungeon has some secret, and it's a high fantasy world that is very similar to the kind of fantasy world that Slayers is. Like magic has rules.
There's wizards, there's swords.
Yep.
There's knights.
There's every standard, like the standard types of fantasy
there's
races.
Orcs,
yep.
Dragons.
And the plot itself is moderately compelling. The characters are pretty good. So, yeah, the episodes are almost like 30%, there is a story here. 30%.
I think less than that.
Yeah, well, there is a story here. I didn't say it was a particularly intense story.
No, it's like, there is a story, right? It's like we have a goal in this dungeon. There's a real thing going on, right? But it's like you're only mostly seeing them deal with the problem of getting food. It would be like if you had a TV show, like a real life TV show about, I don't know, a car salesperson, right? And it's like, yeah, we let you know if car sales are going well, poorly, how their life is going a little bit, just so you understand who the person is, right? But mostly we're going to be like, all the screen time is going to be going to the 3 meals a day that this person eats, right? Because it's like, no matter what your job is, you got some food you're eating, right? You're a human. You're not starving yourself. I hope not.
Yeah.
So we're just going to show you, we're going to spend 25 out of the 30 minutes of screen time showing you this person cooking, eating, grocery shopping, etc. And the rest of the time, we're just sort of letting you know who they are and what's up in their life.
Yeah. But it is like the plot is starting to evolve around them. Like a lot of the on the way storytelling is building up to clearly this manga is going to deal with the dungeon itself. And clearly these adventures, again, I haven't read the manga, so I'm actually speculating from the 12 episodes of the show that have come out, because that's literally all I know about this show or this plot. But I feel like the fact that they're just eating in the dungeon and entering the ecosystem of the dungeon means that the bigger plot is that is actually the secret to the dungeon. They're going to get deeper than anyone's ever gotten, because even though they're not the most powerful, they're doing it right.
They're pretty powerful though, right? It's like that usually a lot of these shows, the adventurers are either going to be like really weak beginners and you see them level up over time.
Yep.
Right? Here, it's like they actually are pretty strong.
They're like
right?
mid-level, like in D&D terms, they're like 7th or 8th level, like serious biz characters.
I think they might be stronger than that even, right? They're obviously not like god tier or anything, but they're, like mega wizards. But it's like they're really powerful.
They feel like a level 8 to 10 like character.
Especially,
could do
probably the highest
D&D.
level is actually the little thief guy who doesn't get enough screen time.
Oh, Chill Chuck.
It's like, yeah, he basically detects every trap, no problem, never gets fooled by them.
He's never wrong. Whenever he says not to do something, like they should have listened to him.
Yeah, it's like he just seems less powerful because his skills are just thief skills and not kill monster skills.
There's a great moment where they're like, all right, we're gonna do this and this and this and this to fight the thing, and they're like, what are you gonna do? He's like, the fuck, I'm not doing anything. I'm a thief, but I'm not here. That's not the part I'm good at. My goal
there was
is to
an episode that highlighted him, episode 3 maybe.
But it's like, my job is to get you there. My job's not to directly fight the dragon, dudes. Like, you keep forgetting this.
Yep.
But the characters are really endearing along the way. But what I really want to focus on is that the structure of the episodes is just, it's leaning into the cooking show aspect in a very apt way. Because one, Studio Trigger, they understood the mission. You have to make the cooking part of the show be Ghibli levels of I want to eat that as the viewer.
Even though it's monsters.
Yeah. And right away, I say every episode, if we haven't eaten dinner, I really want to eat what they're cooking, to the point that I'll drool. Like it's just Ghibli level animation of the cooking process.
Well, and then when the meal is done, they always have this like still frame that they sort of slowly zoom out of,
like
right?
straight out of a Japanese travel show.
Yeah, and it's like the best drawing they can make of the food, and like a big text that says what the food is, and then like this sound effect, like doom doom. It's like, ta-da, the food, here it is, the meal.
Yep. But what's really clever is that the cooking, this is going to sound weird to say, the process of the cooking is extremely realistic, despite the fact that none of the ingredients are real, because they basically describe a process of preparing food that is along the lines of what a similar real-world dish would be. Like, this kind of meat with these kinds of risks has to be done this way. Or the bit where, like, he takes a bite of the thing before they cook it, and then later he gets food poisoning. When he bit it, we're sitting there, and Emily's like, why doesn't he get food poisoning? And then 5 minutes later in the show, we're like, well...
Yeah, there's a lot of sci-fis and fantasies that do that, where they take the rules of the real world, apply them to something fantastical while keeping a lot of the truths intact, right? It's like, this is true about eating lamb meat. We'll just which is a real thing in the real world. So we'll take that and we'll just say that it's also true for cooking monster meat, right? And
but they pulled me in too, because early on there's the episode where it says she's like, I want to eat the living armor, and everyone's like, that's literally impossible. What's wrong with you? And even I, the viewer, was like, okay, they're not going to eat the living armor. Clearly something else in this episode. And then by the end of the episode, when they eat the living armor, it was just fantastic. Like, that was an A+ moment. But then,
there's always, you could sort of actually see through that one, because it's like, they're going to eat it somehow, even though it's made of metal. I wonder what it could be.
I thought Senshi was going to eat it because he's a dwarf and he just could, but they went way better than what I thought was going to happen. But then you get a kind of a good turnabout and the tone shift, the same way that Slayers would have the tone shift at a certain point, where toward the end of what we've seen so far.
I've only seen 4.
Oh, okay.
I watched the orc episode yesterday.
Let's say they get to a point where they discover a dead body that is extremely realistic, gruesome, like problem body. And,
throw some food on it.
And they're gonna do a resurrection thing, and they animate and step through the process of like, we got to sort the bones. We got to do this. Is that a human bone or a warg bone? Like, get the blood off, get the skin off the skull. Like, they do all the steps just like the cooking show, except it's 100% dead serious and more like a medical drama to do the resurrection spell. And they
applying
pull
the process of cooking to everything you do, even if it's not cooking.
Yep. They pull it off perfectly. It is such a fantastic scene.
It's like if you played shock social science fiction and your only conflict resolution mechanisms are stabbing and cooking. So sometimes I want to resurrect someone. Well, I'm not going to resurrect them by stabbing. I guess I'll resurrect them by cooking.
For the listeners unaware, because you wouldn't know about the role-playing system by Mr. Newman, Shock, Social Science Fiction, which I think got a second edition that we never played or even read. But this is literally a role-playing system where you play in a world, like a D&D world or a space world or whatever, but literally...
Usually science.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, like, unless it's deep science fiction that's addressing social issues. But literally, the rules are, there are 2 ways to resolve all conflicts at the table, no exceptions. So as a group, you decide what those 2 options are, and that's it. Everything is literally framed that way in the game, and it's fantastic. And it is so applicable to how Delicious in Dungeon proceeds. It's perfect. So
yeah, the one thing I got to say is that, it's Studio Trigger comes in, and so you're expecting, right? These are the people who brought you Inferno Cop.
Kill La Kill.
Kill La Kill.
Right. Little Witch Academia. Promare.
Yep. So you're expecting it to be bombastic, off the wall, extreme, like so anime, right? And it really isn't, because they got this manga that they're adapting, right? A lot of those other ones were, originals, and whatnot, that was like mostly them or all them. And so they could put their sort of own style on it. But when you're sort of adapting a manga, you have to stick to the manga. But you can see there are certain scenes where they are able to find like a time and place where they can make some Studio Triggerness. And the one that stood out to me the most was, I think, episode maybe 2, where there was like a flashback to the past for the elf or something.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, here they finally found a spot where they could be Studio Trigger and still be themselves, and not just be an anime studio for hire, adapting a manga, rotely.
I just imagine in the studio, like, look, I know you want to animate planets exploding on a galactic scale. I want you to take all that energy and animate this piece of steak, but with that level of intensity. That's your mission.
Yeah, I think we might see some of that when, there's more dragons.
Well, I guess spoilers for episodes 11 and 12. They fight a dragon, and you get some fucking dragon fighting animation.
There you go.
But it's not the best show. Like, this show is good. Like, this is the kind of show, like, when we were at RIT Anime, obviously we would show all 4 episodes of this like as soon as possible, and people would be yelling and screaming in the audience. But this is not like an S tier anime. It's just a good anime that I would recommend watching if you're hankering for some anime.
Yeah, it's like a lot of those scenario-based shows. The premises, they sound fun, but you actually watch those shows and they're sort of quite lowbrow.
They're rarely good. Like, skip them unless someone you trust says they're good.
They're usually just sort of trashy, right? Whereas here, it's like, hey, this is actually something that is solid, entertaining, has a story to follow. Does it have anything big to say? No.
Well,
but it has a little bit more to say about, food, where food comes from, etc. It has a little bit to say about
ecosystems. It gets a little more as it progresses into the concept of ecosystems and sustainability. Yep. Like, it starts addressing that pretty directly, and it keeps bringing it up. And clearly, that's the ultimate meta plot, is that whole thing.
Right. So it has a little bit to say, but nothing enormous to say. And it's just enjoyable and not a waste of your time, right? Yeah. Whereas I think if I actually wanted to watch someone leveled up on 1,000 slimes to become the most powerful, that I'd probably only need to watch the first episode and the last episode on 2x speed to get everything I need out of it, right?
But one thing I think is not worth we should at least mention is that the show has drama and like has action and all and the cooking, but it is legitimately funny. The characters are pretty good characters. The only weird thing about it to me is that the elf character acts a lot more the way I would think a human would act. And meanwhile, the human characters act a lot more like how I would expect a non-human character to act. Like, the elf is not how you imagine elves. Elves might just be weirder in this universe. They're not Tolkien elves. They're a different kind of elf.
Yeah, the elf is, the defining characteristic of the elf is that she's the one who's always weirded out by all the foods and doesn't want to eat them, but then eventually eats them and they're delicious. And yet doesn't learn her lesson ever, right? And even when the food is normal, like she's drooling and happy because they're going to eat normal foods like carrots or lettuces and cabbages, right? And she's like, and breads. And she's like, hooray, normal food. I want to eat it. I want to eat it. And you're like, finally, you're not complaining about the food. And then she's like, oh, but this food was grown in poop. And it's like, food on the surface is grown in poop too. Why are you just grossed out by literally any food you would ever eat? Is like only lembas bread good enough for you and nothing else? Like, I don't know what's up with this elf. It's like literally, it's like, stop it already. You've been grossed out by the food before eating it 4 or 5 episodes in a row, however many, I imagine all of them. And then you eat it and it's delicious every time.
Oh, I don't know.
Shut up next time.
I don't know if it was mentioned in the show or not because I didn't know this, but apparently she's a half elf, which might explain a lot.
Okay. All right. Didn't know that.
Yeah, didn't know that. If that's a spoiler, sorry, that's like the top of Wikipedia. So what do you want?
Okay.
So yeah, I'm gonna keep watching it. Probably.
I'll watch it to the end.
I'll watch till the end. I can't.
I also have all this manga here. Maybe I'll read that. I read some of it.
All right, easy show.